As pastors and ministry leaders, we all know that at times, disunity, misalignment, and conflict can ripple beneath the surface of our leadership teams, whether it's paid staff, church board members, elders, or key volunteers. In this episode, I'm joined by Chris Sonksen, pastor, author, and ministry coach, as we look at practical ways to address these subtle conflicts before they grow and become toxic and painful for our church and our ministries. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of FrontStage BackStage. I am your host, Jason Daye, and every single week we bring a conversation with a trusted ministry leader to help pastors just like you embrace a healthy, well-balanced, sustainable leadership for both life and ministry. We're proud to be a part of the Pastor Serve Network, and the FrontStage BackStage is more than just a YouTube show or a podcast. In fact, every single week, our team puts together a complete toolkit so that you and your ministry leaders can dig more deeply into the topic that we discuss. And so you can find all of our episodes and all the associated toolkits at pastorserve.org/network. So be sure to check that out. Now, if you're joining us on YouTube, hello, give us a like and comment below. We'd love to get to know you better. Share your name and the name of your church, and our team will be happy to be praying for your ministry. And whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, be sure to follow, subscribe. Be sure to share this with other pastors and ministry leaders so they can receive the help and get to know some of these amazing guests and some of these really incredible topics that we're discussing. And as I said, super excited for today's show. I am joined by Chris Sonksen, who is a pastor, who is a coach to pastors, an author, and super excited, Chris, to have you. So welcome to the show, brother.
Oh, man, thank you. No, it's awesome to be on the show with you. You got a good voice for this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hello, and I want to welcome you to Pastor Serve.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh, Chris, I tell you what, brother, as pastors, we know, and the pastors who are watching along, we all kind of know the dream for the pastor of any local church or any ministry leader is really to have the entire leadership team unified, right? Moving in the same direction.
Right.
Because when we see that sense of unity, so often ministry is more efficient, ministry is more effective, and quite honestly, ministry is a lot more fun, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that you've shared, you talk about, you coach about, and you write about in your latest book, Saving Your Church from Itself, is the fact that the enemy knows this as well, right? The enemy knows that when we're unified, when we're all, moving in the same direction, that a lot more can be accomplished for the kingdom. And so the enemy tries to stir up disunity. So Chris, I would love for you to kind of share with us a bit about disunity showing up in the local church.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for letting me be on the show. It's really cool. And the book, Saving Your Church from Itself, again, yeah, like you said, focuses on this concept of unity. One of the things that I always say is this, is that when the enemy takes a run at your church, he doesn't do it through those who attend it. He does it through those who lead it. If you think about it for a moment, it's kind of funny whenever I say that at a conference somewhere, you can kind of like people are pondering, is that really true? And you're thinking, well, think about it. When's the last time you heard about a church having a major problem, a split, a big hurtful situation because the guy in the 10th row who nobody knows his name is causing all the problems?
Right, exactly.
It's going to be board member, key leader, key staff. That's where the problem is. And notice it says not if the enemy takes a run at your church, when the enemy takes a run at your church, because he's going to do it. He hates the local church. He hates what we do. He hates what we stand for. And so he's going to do everything he can to stop the local church. And what greater way to do it than to create disunity and disharmony among the people of his church and the body of Christ. And so that's the premise of an understanding of the book is here's the idea that we got to fight for unity. We got to fight for alignment. We got to fight to be healthy. But we also need to realize that most of the time, It is not 7 or 8 layers deep into the church where the problem will be found. It's usually in that top 1 or 2 tier of leadership where there is some toxic behavior, where disunity starts showing up, and ultimately where the problems occur.
Yeah, that's so solid, as you said, it just makes sense
Yeah.
that if the enemy was really trying to cripple the church,
Mm.
the way to do that is through the leadership. And so, Chris, talk to us a little bit about what does disunity really breed in leadership in a church? What are some of the things that I mean? I know we all can probably think of some, like you said, some scandalous stories that make headlines. But when we're thinking of just the local church, because not every local disunity does not mean major scandal, right?
Right.
Disunity can just be distracting us from the mission.
Yeah.
So what really is disunity breeding amongst the leadership in a local church?
Yeah. Well, disunity, I think, well, it breeds a couple things and it creates a couple problems. The Bible tells us a kingdom divided against itself is not going to stand. And so we know that it's going to, I think it does a couple things. One, I think it limits the church's potential. It breeds a limiting of potential. Um, it has the potential of dividing the church, or at least at the lowest base, causing some pain. Definitely has the ability to cause some pain and some issues. It has the ability to keep the church from moving forward with what's going on and what's happening. And I think it also can create a lot of confusion. You know, any any more than one vision will always create division. And
Right.
so what happens is there's confusion in the church because they're hearing this one thing from this one leader, but sideways conversation they're hearing this from this other leader, and so it creates a lot of confusion and a lot of disunity in the church.
Yeah, and I imagine every pastor watching along, listening in, is sitting there thinking, yes, I see this. I see this showing up in different ways in my church. We do have leaders who don't seem to be all on board, or we're casting fresh vision for
Yeah,
a new season of
yeah,
ministry. And a lot of churches are in that phase right now,
yeah.
because there has been, a plateau decline, especially coming out of a pandemic. Like,
Right.
there's have to been a lot of innovation, a lot of stepping back and rethinking. Okay, how are we living out the mission? So I'm sure that right now, probably pastors more than I'm not going to say more than ever, but more than in a
Yeah,
long time, are dealing with this casting of new vision,
yep,
and struggling with perhaps getting everyone on board.
yep,
So
yeah,
Chris, what are some of the ways that a pastor can kind of be proactive in helping, um, you know, set aside a sense of disunity
yeah.
and bring leadership into alignment? What are some of the keys that kind of help a pastor move in that direction?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to even take that statement and move back a little bit. And what I mean by that is the subtitle of the book is Six Subtle Behaviors That Tear Teams Apart. And I think it's important to note that when disunity and the kind that, well, hey, that guy's talking a little bit, creating some a little bit of problem. It's not just misalignment, like, hey, I think we should be more, verse by verse, and the other guy thinks we should be more topical. But when it starts getting a little bit deeper, there are some subtle behaviors that start showing up. And I think it's important to recognize those subtle behaviors and know that, okay, something's starting to go a little bit negative here. Something's starting to get a little bit off base here. And sort of answer and thoughts to your question, like, how do you get back on unity, or how does that get created? I think it's important to step back and recognize when you start sensing disunity.
That's good. Yeah.
There's a staff member that is talking a little bit. There's a board member that just seems to kind of be. There's this one guy that I've given a lot of influence to, and he's kind of on our teaching staff, and he's listening to his own press, and everybody loves him. But you could tell he's kind of creating his own little tribe. And the important thing is to recognize the subtle. Notice it says 6 subtle behaviors. They're not blatant. They're subtle behaviors, and before they get big, for instance, a couple weeks ago, I was on the phone, and we do a lot of coaching. We through our organization, churchboom.org, we do a ton of coaching. And I was on the phone with a guy a couple weeks ago, and he's, I might, if I said his name, you might even know him. Very large church, and he's hurt. The campus pastor is leaving. He's going to start a church 2 blocks away. The whole
Mm.
let of the Lord thing. He goes kind of down that path. And I said to the pastor in our call, I said, "Hey, when did you start recognize this?" He goes, "Oh, about a few months ago." I go, "No, no, no. When did you recognize it?" And he said, "About a year and a half ago." Because that's where it happens. It's always a subtle behavior before it becomes a blatant behavior. One little tip I always tell pastors is this, is I said, you're in front of the 8 ball when they still care about the relationship with you. You're behind the 8 ball when they no longer care about the relationship with
Wow.
you.
Yeah.
That's when that it's starting to move in that area. So I think in order to create the unity, I think you have to back up and recognize when that subtle behavior is happening.
Yeah, that's excellent, Chris. And so walk us through a little bit some of these subtle behaviors, because I think this is golden. I'm glad you went this direction, because this idea that kind of the whole nip it in the bud type of a thing. Like
Yeah.
whenever we begin to see a little bit of and it makes so much sense, Chris, as we're talking through this, because if we think of just other relationships we have, right,
Right.
As a parent or as a spouse,
Right.
I mean, whenever you see a little bit of dissonance in a relationship.
Right.
We know that if you don't sit down and have a constructive conversation and try to find out, okay, what are you feeling? What am I, process through
Right.
that
Right.
just festers and causes so much more damage down the road. So it makes perfect sense. We all like intuitively know this,
Right.
but oftentimes in leadership, and I'm guilty myself over the years, there are things you notice a little something, but you figure, hey, there are lots of other things you're dealing with. You
Yep.
figure, oh, it'll pass,
Yep.
whatever, and you don't address it. And then,
Right.
like you said, a year and a half later, it's become an issue at that point. So
Yep.
talk to us a little bit about what are some of those little subtle things that we should be looking for so that we can address it more in a healthy, constructive manner, as opposed to a year down the road, it's damaging, it's more painful, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Here's just a few thoughts on that.
Yeah.
One of the things we talk about throughout the book is a critical spirit. Um, Something happens, you start to notice it. And here's the thing: it's never blatant. It's never, "Well, I don't like you. I don't like you. I don't
Right.
know what you're doing." If it was blatant,
Right.
it'd be a lot easier. But it's the subtle thing. It's the little, that person is getting a little more critical than they used to get. They used to come to staff meetings with solutions. Now they just come with problems. They used to be in alignment, but there's always seems to be just a little bit of friction with them. It's nothing blatant. It's not black and white, but there's a little bit of that critical spirit. Another one is when pride starts to set in. You start noticing a little bit of pride, a little bit of arrogance, especially if if they gain some influence, if they gain some platform time, and then all of a sudden maybe a little pride starts stepping in, and and here's when, and if someone is an associate and they're listening to this, if someone's an associate, here's when pride's starting to slip in. When you start to internally think, not that you would voice it, but when you start to internally think, things would be better if I was in charge.
Mm.
The second you start, if you've ever thought that before, you are heading down the road of pride, and you're heading down the road of a toxic behavior that will ultimately tear you and the other person apart, and it'll hurt the church. So, hey, things would be better if I was in charge. Do what you want in the church. Leave my department alone. Here's
Mm.
another toxic thought that goes into pride. Um, uh, like I said, do what you want in the church. Leave my area alone. Do operate however you want. I'm gonna kind of be in my corner. And then here's another one: and maybe you don't think it this way, but I celebrate the church. I kind of tolerate the pastor.
Mm.
And when you fall into things would be better if I was in charge, I celebrate the church, but I tolerate the pastor. I love the church. I like the pastor.
Mm.
When if you're that person, if you're not the lead pastor and you sense that coming into your heart, you gotta deal with it. And if you're the lead pastor or the leader of that department or the leader of that organization, whatever it may be, you got to recognize that pride. So critical spirit, pride, isolation. When they start isolating themselves a little bit from everyone else, and they kind of have their own subgroup that they're developing, it's not that it's again blatant, but you just start noticing it. I'll give you one example. Several years ago, there was a guy that started drifting a little bit, and I could feel it and I could tell it, on our team. And he said, I confronted him about it, and he said, "Well, what?" He didn't say what proof do you have, but like what? Why do you even get that idea? I said, "For the last 4 years, you've always come to this table with a pen and paper because you thought I had something to teach you. You don't come with a pen and paper anymore because you think you've learned everything, and you think I have nothing else to teach you." And it opened up an incredible conversation. It was a subtle behavior, and I think that our antenna has to be up, because if we wait until we're behind the eight ball and they no longer care about the relationship with us, man, that's when I think it can get really toxic, and it can
Yeah.
get really ugly, and it can happen fast. And I'll add one more if it's okay, and that is this: is that I think it's important to understand it's such a good thing to teach your staff. And here's the statement: submission begins where agreement ends. Let that sink in for a moment. Submission begins where agreement ends. Let me come at it from a different angle. There can be no submission if there's no disagreement. There's only submission when there's disagreement. So when we say, "Man, I submit to authority as unto the Lord," and all the things that we say, but then as long as everything's fine, but there can be no true spiritual submission until there's disagreement. And that's the thing, I think, especially if we're serving in that second role or third role, we're not the lead guy. We got to realize that our true submission's only going to happen when there's a disagreement. If that really shows up, and I think sometimes we get that sort of attitude, like I think some of David's men had in the cave. Somehow they think it was their job to replace what God put in place.
Mm.
And it's not. Our job is to submit. Our job is to submit. And I think the way that you choose to serve under is the way that God will give you opportunities to serve over.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. Chris, I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper on a couple of things that you shared
Yeah.
there, especially in regard to thinking about church leadership. And some people watching, listening in, you might be from a larger church where you have multiple staff. Some of you might
Yeah.
be from maybe a smaller church or kind of a regular sized church in the U.S.
Yeah.
where a lot of your ministry leaders are volunteers.
Yeah.
And so this apply. I mean, what you're sharing applies whether it's paid staff or volunteer staff. I
Right.
think in some ways, we've all probably experienced this to some degree. Volunteer. There's a different challenge with a volunteer leader, because I mean, not to be crass, but you can't fire a volunteer really. It's more challenging, right? Because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like it's a role, it's a position that they are,
Yeah.
being compensated for. So there's some challenges there. But one of the things you said made me think about, obviously, Chris, you have mentored your staff well over the years, because your staff has gone on into other leadership positions. So it's not like it's this heavy-handedness where I feel threatened or something if
Right.
if one of my staff members or one of my key volunteers is stepping up. So talk to us a little bit about that balance, because it's this idea of like the pride issue, right? Like it's the idea of you don't want them to get prideful, but at the same time, Chris, you love your team and you
Sure.
want to see them grow. You want to see
Yeah,
them
absolutely.
succeed in ministry and become even closer to Christ and greater leaders. So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about that balance between wanting them to succeed and grow, and you want to send them all to do great
Yeah.
things for the kingdom, right? I mean, that's our heart.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that balancing that, not getting too far ahead of yourself, right? Because that can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that's a great thought, great observation. I'll tell you, I was on the phone with Mark Cole. He's the CEO for all the John Maxwell companies. So I think John Maxwell owns 7 companies. Matter of fact, if you follow them, I think 2 months ago, John had literally handed the baton over to Mark Cole, and Mark's been a longtime friend. Mark and I don't know, a year ago when all this was in transition, John's going to start handing the authority over to Mark. Mark's going to be the new guy that runs all the 7, I think 7 businesses that John has. It was interesting, and here's the point. I was sitting at lunch in Atlanta with Mark quite a while back, and I said, "Well, that's amazing. He's giving you all this, like, it's a big deal. It's a huge
Right.
mantle. Like, the John
Yeah.
mantle, like, it's pretty big." It was interesting because this is what he said to me. He said, "John, the reason John can give me this is because John knows, even though we've been planning this for a couple of years, if he decides to take it back from me right now, I will humbly submit to that. He knows my heart. He knows I wouldn't
Wow.
get upset. He knows that it's like, here's the keys to the kingdom. Wait a minute, I'm going to hold on for 5 years. Okay, that's fine." Um, Now, I say all that to say, I think that's really what it's all about. This isn't about, okay, you guys got to be in control and submit to me. No, that's not what it is. I do think there's authority and spiritual authority there. It's not about that. I think it's about the heart of the leader wanting to make sure that his team is excelling and doing their best. But then there's trust, like John Maxwell to Mark Cole. Then there's trust because that staff member or that key volunteer knows that they're going to submit to the pastor, know that they're going to love him. They know, hey, my pastor loves me, wants the best for me, is going to believe in the best of me. And the pastor knows, I can trust this person's heart. I
Mm.
know that they're not out to hurt me. I know that they're not out to do anything to damage the church. There has to be that trust. So, yeah, you're right. I don't, because I think that's like, I think when pastors lord over or anything like that, that's just dangerous. That's always a sign of insecurity. You
Right.
know, I think that insecurity shows up when we are secretly threatened by other people's talent. I think that's a dangerous place to be, or we're secretly happy when other people fail. I think those are the 2 signs, I think, of drastic insecurity in someone. But if the lead pastor cannot or can start operating in a place of security, and they can, and the staff or volunteer staff, again, smaller churches, volunteer staff, meeting, whatever, there can be trust. I i know this guy wants what's best for me. I know this girl, this guy, whatever, would never do anything to hurt me. I think that's where it has to be. It has to be. It's interesting that I do a little leadership thing. I always say, isn't it interesting when you look at Eve, the very first display of sin is Eve in the garden with the enemy. And what does the enemy say? Did God really say? It's not really blatant, but I think the spirit of it is, did God really, can you really trust him?
Mm.
Of all the things that the enemy could have attacked Eve on, you know what I mean? Like, let's go after lust or pride or this or that,
Right.
whatever. It's interesting, of the very first sin, of the very first temptation of all of mankind was, did God really say? Can you really trust him? Because if I can destroy your trust in him, I can destroy your relationship. And it's the same thing in a staff.
That is so good. That's solid. Solid,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
Um, I love this conversation around trust because one of the things that you write about in the book is this idea of, I think you call it artificial harmony. Is that what
Yeah.
it is? Yeah, artificial harmony. So
Yep.
it's this idea that, hey, it kind of seems like, things are gelling, like things are going together, um, but perhaps not. So talk to us, Chris. How as leaders in the church, as pastors, how can we really know if real unity is happening, if we're really
Yeah.
aligned, if we're really moving forward together, or if there's some artificial harmony, as you call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, I love that phrase, though. I'd like to say I created it. I didn't, but but I love the phrase artificial harmony because it's just two words that never go together. And it usually catches people's attention. Like, what's that supposed to mean? Well, and here's the thing. The basis is, and then I'll explain a little exercise because I think it actually could be helpful to people. Artificial harmony really is, again, it's exactly what it says. It's when we know that there's a little bit of a problem, there's a little bit of an issue between that staff member and that leader, or that leader and that volunteer, or the pastor and that board member, whatever the combination is. We know that there's a little bit of a problem, but we don't ever deal with it. We don't ever, as I say in my culture, we don't ever Matthew 18 it. We always say that. It's huge in our culture. It's like, hey, man, Matthew 18, Matthew 18 it means go to your brother at once, deal with the thing. For whatever reason, it's amazing to me how much of us want to live in willful blindness. That we know that there's a problem. We know there's a little tension. It's not like this huge thing, but it's like the youth pastor and the volunteer, the board member, and there's a little bit of tension there, and we just kind of think it's going to go away, which it normally doesn't. It's not like if you have a crack in the cement of your driveway, one day and then you walk out, oh my gosh, it came back together. It doesn't come back together. You got to work at it. So I think, first of all, I think it's important to recognize when there is tension and artificial harmony. It's like we're acting like everything's fine, but you two are not fine, or we're not fine. So let's have the honest conversation and let's deal with it. Now, maybe we're afraid of conflict. Maybe we're afraid of the outcome. Maybe we're afraid if we tick someone off that they're going to get upset and then they're going to kind of come against us, and they're related to 20 other people in the church, and all that stuff that goes through our crazy mind. But we're all guilty of it. But I'm just telling you, here's the thing I say about artificial harmony. Most of the time, I say willful blindness as well, because most of the time we know it's there. We know it's there. It's like there's a little tension here. We know it's there. But here's the thing. Sometimes we don't want to deal with it now. Wow, I'll deal with it later. Here's the thing, bro, is this. Pay now or pay later. But if you pay later, you'll always pay more. You're going to pay more. And you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. So here's the thing that I always teach at conferences and stuff like that, is how not to live in artificial harmony. So I'll draw a line, and I kind of draw a straight line like this, and then I put a line down the middle. So a straight line that's parallel, a line down the middle. On this side is artificial harmony, and on this side is mean-spirited. So you got a line, and then you got a little line that divides it. So on this side of the room, if you will, is artificial harmony. This side is mean-spirited. Here's the thing. I tell people all the time, you want to live as far away from artificial harmony, but never enter into mean-spirited. That's the goal. Because there's two sides to this parallel line: artificial harmony and mean-spirited. You want to live far away from artificial harmony. Have the tough conversation. If you know there's a little bit of tension, deal with it. Do the Matthew 18 thing, but never, ever enter into mean-spirited. Artificial harmony left undone is what ultimately could create a toxic behavior that could hurt the church and hurt the team. So deal with the artificial harmony.
Right, that's good. Okay, I want to dig into something here, brother, because a lot of what you shared, and this is all fantastic stuff about how disunity, kind of kicks up. As you've said, a lot of this isn't like huge in-your-face stuff. It's the subtle things that you recognize, and I guarantee you, because even as you're talking, I'm reflecting back across the churches I pastored, right, and I'm thinking about these little things where. And I'm sure every person watching or listening right now, every pastor is thinking of probably someone's name right now. Like they're thinking like, hey, wait a second. There is this little thing that I know isn't quite right. And I have kind of just smiled and moved on and figure it'll work itself out. Right. So we've all been there. Probably everyone watching or listening right now is thinking this themselves. So for those pastors who are feeling this right now, and no, there is some subtle disunity happening, right?
Yeah.
What, Chris, would you say to them? Like, what is their first steps right now? Like, What would you do? So you know this exists, right? You know this is with one of your leaders or one
Yeah.
of your staff, one of your volunteers, whatever. You know this exists. What would you say, Chris, to the person right now listening and watching who's going, yes? What would you say? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, I think that you have to have. Um, I think you have to start it off with an honest conversation. If you're recognizing, if it's blatant and you're like, man, we've got tension between each other. There's no elephant in the room. We both know we're mad at each other. We're angry with each other. I think that's a little more obvious. When it's a little more subtle, like, well, like, hey, I've noticed you don't bring a pen and paper anymore. Uh, Maybe you don't think I have anything to share with you anymore. Something like that. When it's more a little less, above anything else, I think it always starts with an honest, non-mean spirited conversation. Hey, uh, I'll just use role model with you. So, Jason, you work for me. I've been noticing a little bit, Jason. It might be me, but I've noticed in staff meetings lately that you're a little bit more jumpy and a little bit more critical. You used to come with solutions all the time, but you don't as much anymore. And I feel like it's becoming a little bit critical. And I was just wondering if you could speak into that for me. By the way, I love that phrase. Can you speak into that for me? It
Mm,
allows you to stop and see what they're going to tell you. That's as simple as what I just did right there is exactly where you start. I don't know any other way except for to follow that biblical principle of go to your brother at once. I don't think you go in with a laundry list.
right.
I don't think you go in that this is strike three. If you're coming in, like you said, hey, someone's listening, going, yep, I got someone on my team, and it's a little bit. I think you simply just, hey, here's a few things I'm noticing. I don't know what's going on. Wondering if you could speak into it.
Yeah, that's good.
Let them speak into it and let it go from there. Here's a couple things that are going to happen. One, you've already initiated the first conversation. You might walk away going, they're not being honest. I know there's something there. Okay. Okay. Wait a little bit. Not a long time. Wait another few weeks. Watch a little bit more. Bring them in again. Now you bring it up a little bit more.
Hmm.
Here's what I strengthen a little. Hey, we talked a month ago, and man, I'm still noticing it. Matter of fact, and then I give it an example. I usually don't on the first one as much. Just 2 days ago, we're in a meeting and you rolled your eyes. It
Mm.
wasn't you a year ago. What's happening? Why are you doing that? I need you to be honest with me. And you sort of kind of not mean, but you heat up the conversation a little bit, get a little more direct and allow that person to. And I love the phrase, can you speak into that for me? It gives them the opportunity, but I don't know any other way, Jason, except for you got to have the difficult conversation.
Yeah, that is good. And that's very helpful, even just the way that you phrase that and actually walking through some examples.
Yeah.
Um, because again, sometimes we might feel ruffled as a leader, and
Yeah.
so when we enter that conversation without even really recognizing it, we're already maybe somewhat defensive or something,
Yeah.
and people can sense that edge, even if you're trying not to be.
Right.
So the spirit of that conversation, which I love, Chris, is what you're saying is this: you have a concern, not that someone's undermining you as much as you have a
Right.
concern that there's something not right here, and yet
Yeah.
everything used to be cool.
Yep.
And so, like, you care, what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
you care about this relationship. And so that's how you're seeing it. And like you said, it might be me, but this is what I sense. Can you speak
Yep.
into, I mean, just this, you're not coming in to write someone up, right? I mean,
No,
you're coming
no.
in like we're friends here. We're
Yeah.
on the same team. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just concerned. I love that. That's so helpful,
Yeah.
man.
Real quick, there's two words
Sure.
that I'll throw it in and then go to your next question. Gentle strength. I
Mm,
think in the conversation, you have the strength is in your straightforwardness, but it's brought in a gentle way. And those are two words that I always share with pastors: gentle strength. In those moments, gentle. You're not gentle, weak. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. Could be me, bro. No, no, no. Hey, I've been noticing something. This is
yeah.
what I'm seeing. Da 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 da. Can you speak into it? You're direct, but you're gentle. It's a gentle strength. You're not him hawing. It's a gentle strength.
Right. And there's obviously some intent there, right? I mean, like, it's not just like, hey, let's kick it around and hope they bring it up, right? I mean, it's like you're being intentional. Like you
Nope.
said, you're being
Yep.
direct, but you're doing it in a gentle way,
Yep.
in a loving way, in a caring way, because you're looking at repairing something.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
and who knows what it might be, Chris, honestly, like they could be going through something in their marriage. They could be going through something, a health issue that they haven't yet shared, or
Right.
it could be anything. It may have nothing to do with us
Right.
or whatever they're going through.
100%.
Honestly, we don't know that at this
We,
point.
we don't know that, but you can't, again, that to me, even though that maybe not be a dispute, that's artificial harmony. We're
Right.
acting like you're okay. You're not. Now, it could be because you're mad at me. It could be mad that you're mad because you got passed on a promotion. Could be something happening in personal at home. I don't know.
Right.
But there's an artificialness that's happening in our relationship. Address it. I'm you have to address it because it normally just doesn't fix itself.
Yeah, that is so good. This entire conversation has been incredible, Chris. Certainly appreciate you making the time to hang out with us. And man,
Absolutely.
and this is such a this is one of those topics that everyone knows exists, right? Everyone knows exists, but most people, for whatever reason, because we don't love conflict. I mean, if you love conflict, there's probably something else you need to deal with, right? If you love conflict, but most of us don't. Exactly. So most of us don't love conflict. So we know these things exist, but we really don't talk about it much. We don't really dig in. And so this has been so incredibly helpful. Just the way that just the posture. And just it's so vitally important. So I'm so thankful that you made time to hang out with us.
Yeah.
And again, if people want to connect with you, with your ministry, want to get the book, Saving Your Church from Itself, what's the best way that people can connect?
Yeah, well, two things. One, our coaching site, and you can connect with me at churchboom.org, churchboom.org. The book, you can order the book. And here's something, you can order the book and get a free, it's a six session outline. So if you buy the book, say for your team, because it is definitely a team book, if you buy it for your top 8 leaders, you can download for free at saving your church from itself.com, savingyourchurchfromitself.com. So if you go to that website, there's a link there where you can order the book through the publishers and all that, but also you can download for free. And now you can walk through the book together with your team. That's got questions in this 6-session free study guide, and kind of walk through it with your team. So go to savingyourchurchfromitself.com. You can order the books, but also you can get that free download. It is, in my opinion, I wrote it with the pure concept. Let's go through it as a team so that we can come out healthier than when we started.
Yeah, I love that. What an awesome resource. Thank you so much for that. And for those of you watching and listening along, I'll have links to everything that Chris mentioned at pastorserve.org/network in the toolkit for this episode. We'll have links to all that so you can be sure to order the book and download that free resource. What a great resource to really take your team through, just to carve out 6-8 weeks, whatever it is, and just everyone dig in.
Yeah.
In your weekly staff meetings, you can take some time to really process through in what a healthy way to kind of really establish your team. And there's no time like the present to really address these types of things, because as we've said, we all know that these things are bubbling up, right? That's just part of ministry, part of ministry, and it'll probably always be part of ministry. So this will be something you'll want to revisit over time. So, man, again, so thankful to have you with us, Chris. It's been absolute joy. So thankful for how you're giving back to the church through your coaching, through your wisdom, through your writing, and super thankful for this opportunity.
Thank you, man. It's really been an honor. Thank you so much.
Awesome, brother. Well, God bless you.
All right, dude. Thanks, man.
Now, before you go, I want to remind you of an incredible free resource that our team puts together every single week to help you and your team dig more deeply and maximize the conversation that we just had. This is the weekly toolkit that we provide, and we understand that it's one thing to listen or watch an episode, but it's something entirely different to actually take what you've heard, what you've watched, what you've seen, and apply it to your life and to your ministry. You see, FrontStage BackStage is more than just a podcast or YouTube show about ministry leadership. We are a complete resource to help train you and your entire ministry team as you seek to grow and develop in life and ministry. Every single week, we provide a weekly toolkit, which has all types of tools in it to help you do just that. Now, you can find this at pastorserve.org/network. That's pastorserve.org/network. And there you'll find all of our shows, all of our episodes, and all of our weekly toolkits. Now, inside the toolkit are several tools, including video links and audio links for you to share with your team. There are resource links about different resources and tools that were mentioned in the conversation, several other tools, but the greatest thing is the Ministry Leaders Growth Guide. Our team pulls key insights and concepts from every conversation with our amazing guests. And then we also create engaging questions for you and your team to consider and process, providing space for you to reflect on how that episode's topic relates to your unique context at your local church, in your ministry, and in your life. Now, you can use these questions in your regular staff meetings to guide your conversation as you invest in the growth of your ministry leaders. You can find the weekly toolkit at pastorserve.org/network. We encourage you to check out that free resource. Until next time, I'm Jason Daye, encouraging you to love well, live well, and lead well. God bless.